Hi, welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today we are going to be working on the first border on our Sarah Star quilt. So let's get going. The very first thing that I'm going to do is get one of my flexible measuring tapes. These are tapes that I do highly recommend that you have. They're great to work with. Anyhow, they're great measuring tapes. I start by measuring either top, bottom, or center. On this one, I'm just going to start on the center. It doesn't matter. I just need to start. I need to measure all 3 points. I'm going to lay the edge of my ruler down here, and I'm going to measure right straight across the center. And on this one, I'm 14.375. So I'm 14 and 3/8. On this one, I am 14 and 3/8 again. Or am I 14? Yep, I'm 14 and 3/8 again. And on this one down here, I must have sewn some pretty fat 1/4 of an inch. On this one, I'm 14 and 3/8 again. So you can see my block is a little bit smaller than what it really needs to be. It has to be, I have to finish all of this off at 15.5 inches in order for my next block to fit properly in. So I am going to take my binding, my border material, which is right here. Instead of cutting it at 1 inch, I cut it at 1.5 because I want a little bit of extra material in here to be able to get my quilt 100% square again where I need it to be at 14 3/4. So I know that my block is 14 and 3/8, I said, I think. So I'm going to go over to my cutting table and I'm going to cut my first 2 pieces at 14 and 3/8. And then I'm going to be back to show you the next step. All right, I've got my 2 borders. I'm going to lay them down. I am going to pin them. I'll pin them on the 2 outsides first, then I'll find the center and pin them there. Then I'll put another pin here and here. I'm going to attach those down. Then once I've attached those down, I'll be back to show you our next measuring step. Now I've got my 2 side borders on, so now I need to measure again. So we're going to grab a scrap sheet of paper and we're going to start measuring. I'm going to take my tape measure again. Whoa. I'm going to take my tape measure again and I'm going to measure from one side to the other. And I'm going to write the numbers down as I go. So on my very first one, I am 16 and 5/8. All right, so I write down my 16 and 5/8. Then I'm going to measure right across the center. Here I go again. And on this one, I'm 16 and 1/2. And on the very bottom, I'm going to measure that one. And on that one, I am 16 and 1/2 again. So my borders now need to be 16 and 1/2. I know that because what you're going to do is take your 16 and 5/8, your 16 and 1/2, and your 16 and 1/2. Add those together, divide them by 3, and I'm going to come up with basically 16 and 1/2. So I'm going to take my second strips over to my cutting table and I'm going to cut 2 of them to be 1.5 inches by 16 and 1/2 inches. Once I do that, I'm going to come back, I'm going to attach them to the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to take you over to the cutting table and show you how to square this thing up so that we are a perfect 14 3/4 inches. Here is our first block, all done with our border. So the next thing we need to do is we've got to square this up. I'm going to take my ruler that measures 24 and 1/2. Yep, 24 and 1/2 by 8 and 1/2. And I'm going to use my center line here, this entire center line, to be able to square up my quilt block. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay it down on my cutting table, nice and flat and as square as I can make it, using the lines on my mat is just guidelines for making it straight. Then I'm going to turn around and grab my 24.5 by 8.5 inch ruler. So from our center, now that we've got this all laid down nice and square, from our center, what we need to do is we need to come out a total of 7 3/4 inches. And the reason why and how I got to 7 3/4 is from here to here, it needs to be 7 inches. I need a 1/2 inch for my border, and then I need 1/4 inch for my seam. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up the 7 3/4 right all the way down. Okay? Then you can double check yourself over here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim right over here. And I can see that I've got my 1/2 inch and my 1/4 inch for my seam all the way down here. I can also see up here I don't, but the reason why I don't is because remember I was a little short on one end. So I'm just going to trim there. Then I'm going to rotate my block, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come over, I'm going to grab my 7 3/4 inch, I'm going to double check over here, and I'm good over here again. I've got my 1/2 inch border plus my 1/4 inch seam. All right, and I've just used the center of my block. I don't have a 14 inch square ruler or a 16. Now I'm going to rotate it one more time, and I'm going to do the exact same thing from these sides. Again, using the center seam to line myself up and make certain that I'm good and square. And I can always come over here and double check myself. And I do have some waste here, and I could have cut it smaller, but this is one way that I can ensure that my block ends up being exactly the size I need it, which is 14 3/4 inches. All right, so I'm gonna, again, go to my 7 3/4 right here, line it up, double check over here, and I'm just gonna trim it up. Now I can take my block and just lay it on my cutting table and make sure that I am the right size. And I am. I've got my 14 inch block, then I have got my 1/2 inch border and 1/4 inch to do a seam. So right now I'm finishing at 15.5 inches. So I'm all set, I'm perfectly square, and I'm ready to go on to the next set. And now I'm going to show you the back. Here's my seams on the back. You can see I did press it open, and that's it. It's all done. So now it's time to get ready for our next border, which we'll do that the 1st of next month.